Welcome back to another video. This is The Salt. We are disciples making disciples, and this week we are diving into service, which is the second step of the 5S framework to discipleship. We've been looking at Matthew 5 through 7, which is the Sermon on the Mount, to look at what it means to grow in discipleship and to help others grow in discipleship. I see discipleship as a two-step dynamic, a two-part dynamic, following and leading. Learn how to follow God and follow others who have faithfully followed God, and to lead others in growing in their faith as well. This video addresses just that in the second step, which is service. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe. Hope you enjoy. Take care. When I joined under my doctorate's program, one of the things that I was looking forward to was entrepreneurship. What I really wanted to do was dive into that and learn the ins and outs of starting a business, and it's definitely an interest of mine. And one of the things was throughout this program, it came time for me to narrow down my focus, right? My emphasis area. So when you're earning a doctorate, you study your general studies. You have the core tenets of leadership that I was learning, but then it came time to hone in and focus in on something. And there was a list of things that I was interested in, but I wanted to take time and pray about it and figure out what God was calling me to do. And I just remember thinking, God, don't call me into servant leadership. Please, not that one. I want to study entrepreneurship, but God had different plans. And here I was, feeling this intense calling into studying servant leadership. And I didn't understand why, but I listened and I dove into it. And it was an interesting thing, because what I didn't realize is the school I was going to, Regent University, was one of the top 2 programs in servant leadership. I don't know why, but I didn't know that when I signed up for it. But it was them and Gonzaga, which is funny because Gonzaga is from the city where I'm from, in Spokane. Those are the top 2 in the nation that cover, that focus in on servant leadership. Well, it ties right into our topic this week, which is service. It is serving. So we're talking about the 5S framework for discipleship. I've taken some of the teachings from Sermon on the Mount, which is Matthew 5 through 7, and dissected a framework to help us grow in our discipleship to Jesus. See, discipleship comes in 2 parts. There's following and there's leading. First, we need to follow God, right? We give ourselves to God, which is fully encapsulated in the first step of the process, which is submission. We covered that last week. You can check out the video there. But we also need to follow other people who have faithfully been living out their journey in discipleship. There are people ahead of us who have gone through this process, people in history, people in our lives that are our elders, are people to look up to and to follow as well. Once we have followed, we have grown in our own spiritual journey, the next step is to then grow in leading others. Now, this isn't leadership in the traditional sense, in the way that our business world may talk about leadership. There's no shortage of self-help books or books on leadership. You can just type in leadership books in Amazon and you'll see thousands of results. But one of the important pieces is when we look to the Bible for our guidance on leadership, time and time again, it comes back to this idea of servant leadership. Funny enough, servant leadership is one of the most talked about and discussed leadership theories in today's modern contemporary world. So what is servant leadership? Servant leadership is taking leadership and it's flipping it upside down. It is taking a top-down approach and instead giving the power to the bottom up. The leader, instead of leading for authority purposes or for prestige or for power, instead becomes the servant of their team. They serve the people rather than just the goals or the objectives of the organization. We are to take that same step when we are looking at discipleship, when we are looking at helping other people grow. The next step after you've submitted and given your life to God will be naturally to serve. Because here's the thing, God is love. That is what he is, and that is what he shares to us. When we eventually join God in heaven, our spirit will be joining his. His Spirit is a spirit of love, of pure, unadulterated love. And he gives us that. His word, his Bible outlines how we are to live in that love. Because here's the thing, God created the world in a particular order. He created it in a particular way. That's what science is, right? Science is trying to discover the order of the world, the objective truth of reality. Well, there is an objective truth of reality, and it's what God created. Now, he created us to live in this world in a particular way. And that's what the Bible is. It's a story about God's love and how we can live more in it. Here's the thing about love. Sometimes love means correction. Sometimes love means that we are telling someone that maybe things aren't right. God is love and he shared that with us. But sometimes that comes at the cost of correcting us because we're not living in his way and the way that he ordained it to be. See, as a parent, I love my children. I love them dearly. But when they try to run off into the street, I'm going to grab their arm, right? I'm not going to let them run into the road. And I might scold them at that point and say, you don't run into the road. We don't do that. You're going to get hurt. And at the time, it might seem a little harsh. At the time, it might not seem, very loving. But it comes from a place of love because I don't want to see that person hurt. I don't want to see them run off the cliff, right? If you see somebody who's going to run right off of a cliff, would you not do everything you can to stop them from doing that? Well, that's how God's love is, right? He watches us from afar and sees us constantly running after cliff after cliff after cliff. I've got 3 children under the age of 4. 2 of them are boys. And I'll tell you right now, one of their main goals in life is just to try to find a way to hurt themselves, severely hurt themselves, all the time. They're constantly finding ways and new ways to just get injured or really get themselves into some trouble. Because they're figuring out the world. They're figuring out what it means to be a person and to live and to move around and explore this world. Well, we are not much different in God's eyes. We're just children running around intentionally trying to hurt ourselves. And it has to take God's love, sometimes in the form of correction, sometimes in the form of a hug, sometimes in the form of just being present. But whatever it is, it takes his love to correct us and bring us closer to him and living in his likeness. That's why it's important for us to start in God's word, to look at what is this storyline, this narrative that's been told for thousands of years, over generations, that tells a story about people living in a broken world, yet living for God, a perfect God. So when we begin our act of service, when we begin our journey, we've submitted to God. Now the next thing is to serve, because we've received God's love. We've received his grace. We've placed our trust into him. And naturally, the next step now will be to love others, to serve others. When we receive God's love, it is our natural inclination then to extend that love onto the people around us. Sometimes that comes in the form of correction. That's the hard part of the Christian life, is we need to figure out a way to do that lovingly and kindly, in a non-judgmental way. How can we live next to people and with people that think differently than us, who act differently than us, look differently than us? But yet, how can we all help each other grow more in the likeness of God, more in the likeness of Christ? See, that's where serving comes in. Because you've received God's love. He started to change your heart. You have begun to grow as a person, both mentally, physically, spiritually. Your soul has grown. And out of that, then you take your experience, you take your knowledge, you take your skills, and you use those in a way to be present in someone else's life and to serve their needs. Now, sometimes this looks like serving someone you don't like. You may not particularly like that person. Yet if God places it on your heart to serve that person, you need to do it. Sometimes he'll ask you to serve in ways that maybe you don't feel comfortable with, maybe out of your box. You may have an an idea of what you're here to do and how you are to serve people. But you may be there in other ways or needed in other ways. For me, that's come in the time of having to be next to people at the end of their life. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to even think about it. But there's been times where at the end of people's lives, I've had to be there and to be present with them and to pray for them. Sometimes it means just mowing your neighbor's yard or helping that elderly person bring the groceries into the house or do some things around their house. Sometimes it means feeding some of the needy people in this world who don't have food. Sometimes it means if you're a business owner and you have a particular service that you offer, maybe it means offering it for free for somebody who needs it, for a family that can't afford it. It could be serving on a board. It could be a number of ways that you help serve other people. It could just be sitting there while somebody's going through a hard time and living life with them by being present. Dude, sometimes it could be making somebody laugh. You could serve somebody by just cracking jokes. There's many ways that we serve other people, but it's taking your personality, your skills, your gifts that you have and offering those up on a platter to somebody else. And there'll be times that people take. We are to give more than we think we should, but at times we do have to have discernment and realize that some people are just going to take. And God calls us to then move on into other ways and to focus in serving others where it can help. But sometimes we have to take off our own mental thoughts, our own mental blocks as to why maybe this person doesn't seem deserving. That's not for us to tell. It's for God, because we don't know what that act of service can do in somebody's life. We are to do it unselfishly as well, right? There's a plethora of influencers out there that are taking pictures of themselves or taking videos of themselves, helping another person. And I think that only does more harm, right? Because if you have to film it, if you have to take a picture of you serving somebody, does that truly come out of a place of wanting to help that person? Or does that come from a place of wanting to get your own recognition, to have people telling you did a good job? Think about it. When you were in your hardest times, when you were down and out, and somebody offered you a helping hand, how would you have liked it if somebody just took a picture of it, posted your face on Facebook, told a story about how bad you were out, how bad things were, and how much they saved the day by swooping in and helping you? Wouldn't that just continue the hurt, the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment that you had about that situation? Because nobody feels good when they're down and out, right? Nobody feels good when things aren't going right. And they don't want the world to know it. Enough people probably know it as is. So if you're going to offer help, God tells us to do it in secrecy. Help because out of the kindness of wanting to help that other person. Help because God helped you in ways that nobody else knows. He's helped connect with you in ways and helped you get through things that you would never want anybody knowing that you went through it. And you were to serve in the same way. We can't let our left hand know what our right hand is doing when we are serving. Can't do it for ourselves. We serve out of a need for genuine love for the other person, for the other people. And that goes in our lives, right, of serving just the people who need something. But it comes for our organizations when we are working for teams, right? Work is a big part of our lives, and we're going to work with people we don't like. God calls us to serve them anyways, because there's no better way to connect with somebody, to connect with someone's heart, to get through those blocks than by serving. If there's a difficult person at work, try serving them. Find a way to help them out and see if it doesn't break down some of those barriers. If you are called to be a leader in your organization, don't use your authority as a way to get people to do what you want. Use that authority to serve others. Clear out time to meet them where they're at. I worked for a sales organization before that was just strictly worried about sales numbers, right? It was all about are you hitting your numbers? And here's the thing, when you boil people down to a number, they start to act just like a number. They're only focused on just doing whatever it takes to get to that number. But the problem is we're people. We're not just numbers, right? We have lives. We're going through struggles. We have enjoyments. We have passions. We have all these things. And when you have a leader who connects with you in that time, then you'll find that it helps the end result. See, leaders should not just focus on getting results. They should focus on the people, because people aren't ends in themselves. They're not just the means to the ends. If you focus on people, if you invest in people, then you'll get the results. Somebody struggling because of personal life issues, connect with them. Be there, be the listening ear, help them heal. And when they heal, they're going to produce better. You're going to get better results, and they're going to trust you and connect with you. Maybe there's some reason in their life that they can't perform at a level that you're expecting them to. Listen to them. Talking it out, you'll likely discover what that block is, and then you as a leader can serve them by removing that block, doing what you can to help with that. If someone's struggling to feed their family, how are they going to go home? How are they going to be at work and perform well? Same thing goes in our personal lives. If people are struggling, how are they going? It's going to be a roadblock into their spiritual growth, into their connection with God and with connection with others. If you could serve them and you can help that need, then it could remove that block in their life to be able to grow closer to God and closer to others. Ultimately, it boils down to the golden rule, which comes straight out of the Sermon on the Mount, which is treat others how you wish to be treated. Think about it. Somebody struggling, think about a time that you've struggled. How would you want to be helped in that moment? How would you want somebody to connect with you and help serve you in that moment? Do that same thing for them. Love them the way that you've been loved by God. God has forgiven you of sins that you shouldn't have been forgiven for. God has seen you at your lowest moment and he's met you. God has given you grace. God has given you love. Give that same grace and love to other people. God has also corrected you. He's guided you. He's given you a sense of direction and vision. Do that same thing for others. Do it out of a place of love, and you'll see growth. So, thank you. Stay salty. I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been a part of our series that we've been looking at the Sermon on the Mount. It's a 5-step process that we boiled down and labeled the 5S framework to discipleship. First, we looked at submission. This one looked at service, and we're going to be looking at the next steps going forward. Next week, we're looking at sacrifice. If you like this content or you'd like to see more of it, please reach out and let us know. I'd like to get in contact with you and hear what your needs are, what you'd like to see addressed. If you do like this content, please head to our website, check it out more, or you can subscribe or follow our page. And as always, stay salty.